Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking the riveting, highly complex, and honestly deeply tragic political Game of Thrones that unfolded in the final year of British India. We're going to be looking closely at the dramatic events between January 1946 and August 1947, a severely compressed period of immense turmoil that fundamentally reshaped the entire Indian subcontinent forever. Okay, let's jump right into this, with a historical fact that usually catches people completely off guard. Mahatma Gandhi was so utterly desperate to prevent the partition of India that he met with Lord Mountbatten and literally offered up the leadership of the entire country to his main political rival. He suggested they make Muhammad Ali Jinnah the prime minister. Gandhi was perfectly willing to let 300 million Hindus be governed by him simply because it was the absolute only remaining way he saw to keep the country united. Section 1. A Political Game of Thrones. To understand how we reached that incredibly desperate moment, we kind of have to hit rewind and start our countdown in early 1946. At that time, a unified exit of the British actually still seemed entirely possible. You see, the question wasn't if the British were leaving, but how and when. Their hand was being forced by four massive pressures. First up, the massive 1942 Quit India movement. Second, the shockwaves from Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's INA and those highly publicized Red Fort trials. Third, you had the stunning 1946 Royal Navy mutiny where Indian sailors outright revolted. And finally, the aftermath of the Second World War, which had left the British treasury completely drained. The British simply had to go. Right at this critical juncture, Jinnah suddenly held immense political power. In the 1946 provincial elections, Jinnah's party, the Muslim League, won a staggering 87% of all the reserved Muslim seats. The math was just undeniable. This overwhelmingly forced the British to negotiate directly with him, completely validating his claim as the definitive voice of Indian Muslims. Now, what's really fascinating here is Jinnah's own personal and political evolution. His own grandfather was actually a Hindu Rajput who converted to Islam, and Jinnah himself started as a very secular Congress member. Going back to 1915, he even welcomed Gandhi back to India from South Africa. But by 1920, fundamentally disagreeing with Gandhi's non-cooperation methods, he left the party. After spending some time practicing law in London, he came back in the 1930s completely transformed, eventually declaring himself the sole spokesperson for Indian Muslims and aggressively campaigning for a separate Pakistan.
Section 2. The Cabinet Mission's Failure.
By the spring of '46, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee realized he desperately needed an exit strategy. So he sent the Cabinet Mission over to India to negotiate a unified, peaceful handover of power. On May 16th, they presented their grand plan. It proposed keeping India united, sure, but under a very weak central government that would only handle defense, external affairs, and communications. The rest of the country? Well, that would be divided into three geographic groups, or sections, A, B, and C. Because this plan actually gave Muslim-dominated areas a massive amount of regional autonomy, Jinnah surprisingly accepted it. For a brief, fleeting moment, a united India actually looked like a done deal.
But that brief glimmer of hope completely collapsed into a summer of absolute chaos. On July 10th, Pandit Nehru held a press conference where he stated that Congress retained the right to change the Cabinet Mission plan. Well, Jinnah saw this as Congress forcing its own ideology. Furious, on July 29th, Jinnah outright rejected the plan. He declared that Muslims would start a struggle, warning that India would either be divided or destroyed, and he officially announced August 16th as Direct Action Day.
This political deadlock up in Delhi didn't just stay in Delhi. It immediately morphed into ground-level horror. The epicenter of this was Bengal, governed by Muslim League Chief Minister Suhrawardi. Under the guise of Direct Action Day, antisocial elements were basically given free rein. In mere days, Calcutta turned into a city of corpses. Roughly 6,000 people were killed and another 15,000 were injured. The violence had truly, undeniably begun.
Section 3. A fragile interim government.
Despite this terrifying outbreak of violence, the ticking clock meant the British had to act. They installed an interim transitional government to manage the country until a full withdrawal could take place. But, let's be real, this government was effectively a sabotage coalition from day one. Congress formed it in early September, and by mid-October, Jinnah agreed the Muslim League would join. But this was a highly strategic move. Jinnah didn't even join it himself. Instead, he placed Liaquat Ali Khan in the all-important finance ministry. This led to endless, grinding bureaucratic interference. Congress ministers found their initiatives blocked at every single turn, completely paralyzing the government.
Section 4. Gandhi's Quest for Peace.
While the politicians were bitterly bickering in the halls of Delhi, Violent retaliation was spreading across the country like wildfire, hitting places like Bihar and the United Provinces. Deeply saddened by the specific riots in the Noakhali region of Bengal, Gandhi decided to take a drastically different, totally grassroots approach. He traveled there in late 1946. In an absolute masterclass of physical endurance and moral conviction, he walked barefoot for about 180 kilometers, visiting 47 different villages. His strategy? He forced a local Hindu leader and a local Muslim leader to physically live together under the exact same roof, acting as joint guarantors of peace for their particular village.
Now, when critics asked Gandhi why on earth he was wandering through remote villages instead of sitting at the negotiating table with Jinnah in Delhi, he offered this really profound thought. He argued that true unity had to be forged by the citizens themselves, not dictated from above by politicians. He truly believed that if the people lived together in peace, their leaders would have literally no choice but to reflect that unity.
So the big takeaway here is this intense ideological rift between the Indian leaders. Gandhi fundamentally believed in curing the disease of division through absolute unity, even if that meant handing Jinnah all the political power. But Nehru and Sardar Patel, they were intensely pragmatic. Watching the interim government fail and the riots spread, they basically viewed Gandhi's grassroots methods as putting a band-aid on a fatal wound. Think about the impossible choice they were facing here. Do you hold on to the ideal of absolute unity, or do you accept a broken reality just to stop the bleeding? Nehru and Patel chose the latter. They realized that to preserve any functional, peaceful state at all, they had to accept partition.
Section 5. Mountbatten's Final Partition Plan.
Okay, so this political deadlock absolutely had to be broken. By March 1947, Lord Louis Mountbatten arrives as the final viceroy, basically tasked with ending the nightmare. But his very first proposal to fix things almost shattered the subcontinent entirely. He proposed what became known as the Dickey-Bird Plan. Get this, it gave every single province and all 559 princely states the option to either join India, join Pakistan, or just remain completely independent. Jinnah was totally fine with this, but Nehru was absolutely furious. He immediately saw that this would fragment India into 500 tiny, competing countries, a total balkanization. Mountbatten realized his huge error and scrapped it on the spot.
In an absolute scramble, Mountbatten turned to his political advisor, VP Menon. Literally between lunch and dinner, in just 6 hours, Menon drafted the final blueprint. The solution? Transfer power to two independent dominions, India and Pakistan. Partition the heavily contested provinces of Bengal and Punjab, and, crucially, force those princely states to choose a side based strictly on their geographic contiguity, which would minimize the chance of rogue independent states popping up everywhere.
Section 6. Freedom at midnight. With the clock practically out and no better options left on the table, all parties, including Nehru, Patel, and Jinnah, reluctantly endorsed Menon's plan on June 3rd. The stage was finally set, and a centuries-old battle for freedom was won at the stroke of midnight on August 15, 1947. Pandit Nehru hoisted the flag, and the nation celebrated its newfound dominion status. But while the ink dried on those political agreements, the Game of Thrones had unleashed a devastating, totally uncontrollable reality on the ground.
The geographical lines drawn by those politicians triggered immense, overnight panic. To put it into perspective, this staggering number, 15 million, represents the estimated number of everyday people who are forced to migrate overnight. Hindus and Sikhs moving one way, Muslims moving the other, resulting in one of the absolute largest mass displacements in human history.
And tragically, there were the lives lost. This number represents the estimated 1 million people who died in the ensuing chaos, violence, and targeted massacres of partition. Alongside this horrific death toll, an estimated 75,000 women were kidnapped and raped. The human cost of drawing those borders was just unfathomable. As we wrap up this explainer, we're really left with a heavy, enduring question. Looking back at the timeline, the missed opportunities like the cabinet mission, the sheer ambition, and all that complex political maneuvering, we really have to ask ourselves, could this immense human tragedy have been avoided through better leadership and compromise? Or was the bloody division of the subcontinent truly an inevitable price for freedom? It's a haunting question that history still wrestles with today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning and keep learning.